Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, technology often gets a bad rap for everything that's wrong with this crazy old world. But we seldom see on our news feeds how technology is actually changing the world for the better. And I know bad news sells, good news doesn't, as the old saying goes. But on this podcast, I try and restore the balance somewhat. So today, I've invited tech and retail sustainability expert Graeme Hamlet from the REPL Group onto the podcast. And we're going to talk about sustainability leadership, what it means for businesses, and also the role of technology in all this. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the UK, where you can join me and Graeme in conversation about all this and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Graeme. Can you tell the listeners a little about your journey, how you got here, and ultimately your origin story with everyone listening?
My sustainability origin story? Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working in retail technology delivery for a very long time. And the end of sort of 2019, we were getting married. We were talking about big houses and we were talking about children. And Mr. Attenborough was on the television a lot more talking about the state of the planet. And I had a number of moments of reflection, really, and realizing that I wanted to keep doing technology and project and program management, but I couldn't really support some of the projects I was doing anymore. I wanted to have a bigger impact, a more sustainable impact. I sort of, found my why, to use Simon Sinek's wording. Yeah. And that sort of put me on a path to investigate what we could do at work. I did some training at Cambridge as well, which opened my eyes beyond belief. And that's where I ended up. So I moved from delivery and technology into sustainable delivery and technology.
Wow, what a great story. And I just love that sense of epiphany that you had there and wanting to make a difference in your career. And fast forward to 2022, you're with the REPL Group, which is part of Accenture. And we have spoken with Kerris Johnson on here before. But for people listening that are just hearing about REPL just for the very first time, can you just tell listeners a little bit more about the kind of problems that you're solving for businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're a retail technology consultancy. And we do little bits, or historically little bits of the true consultative element. But really, it's about delivering technology across supply chain, in-store technology, so tills and chip and pin devices and tablets and kiosks, and workforce management or workforce transformation. And this is where we're improving, employee scheduling, shift management, training, all of that good stuff. Supply chain, speaks for itself. But again, we work with partners to deliver performance improvements in procurement, distribution, category management, and all of that sort of good stuff. So those are the three main pillars. And then we have a fantastic delivery wrapper, I suppose, with expertise in integration, implementation, dev and test, data science, and change management. So we do all of that. And obviously with being now part of the Accenture family, we get to do even more of it with even greater success, which is fantastic.
It really is. And as you said a few moments ago, though, one of your big drivers is sustainability. And it is such a huge topic right now. And I invited you on the podcast to talk about sustainability leadership, because I think it's something that will resonate with businesses all over the world. And a lot of leaders will be looking at how to do this and not knowing the best way to move forward and getting it done right. So can you expand on that and ultimately what it actually means for businesses? Because it is in danger of appearing as somewhat as a buzzword to some people with all the articles that we see on our news feed. But what do you think it means for businesses?
Well, to pick up on the leadership question, I guess, first of all, anybody who's interested in sustainability, leader or otherwise, and leaders can be at every level of the organization, need to realize and understand what sustainability really is. I think there's a tendency to jump straight in and go, well, sustainability means the environment, right? Yeah. But it's not. It's broader than that. It's it's the environmental aspect, the technology aspect, money, right? That's an aspect of it. People and societal impact. So I think number one is understanding the breadth and depth and probably the complexity of it, and realizing that you probably can't fix the world on your own, and then trying to frame what your organization or what you as an individual do, and applying sustainability to that, and realizing where you can make the biggest difference. So, REPL, retail technology, we're not necessarily going to start or be able to impact things like poverty, for example, but we can support, human and social capital with some of the technology we put in place, making people's lives better. We can reduce carbon footprints of retail technology. So, understand that it's a massive problem, understand where your organization fits into it, and where you can make change, and then select the most appropriate tools and approaches to do that. And there are a number of firms out there to help you do that, and I'm not going to name any because it's fairly obvious what I'm going to say.
And I'm curious, just to bring it to life, do you have any examples of the kind of opportunities for businesses to make these positive changes?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I sort of frame it within what REPL do and where we work within sort of supply chain and in-store tech and data science, I think regardless of what the organization does, I think any project can be delivered more sustainably. So have a lower carbon footprint, look after the teams better, probably cost less. So I think whatever you want to deliver, there are opportunities to do it more sustainably. When it comes to technology, I think you can leverage green cloud. So you get reduced costs, you get reduced environmental impact, probably improved performance. And I think green software is another emerging opportunity where the design of technology through hardware and software can be greener. So I think you could apply that to anything. I think for retailers, workforce management tools can massively support your workforce, your human capital. So you can build engagement, you can make their lives easier, give them greater flexibility over their work-life balance, which will make everybody happy, right? Yeah. Supply chains I think it's fairly obvious. You can reduce waste and emissions in that space. Packaging is a big one. You can reduce the amount of packaging, you can make it more recyclable. And in-store technology, again, you can use that technology to reduce footprints. You can use it to increase engagement with your customers. You can use it even to educate your customers about sustainability. So I think there's a wide range of opportunities for retailers.
And you made a great point a few moments ago about the green cloud. And obviously, a lot of these data centers that people are using can use a tremendous amount of water, which impacts the planet, etc. But I think in the very early days, when people migrated their data centers from on-prem and into the cloud, it immediately became somebody else's problem. I'm curious, are you noticing an awareness that, yes, although we're paying somebody else to look after this, it's our responsibility to ensure that we're using a green cloud? Is that an attitude shift that you're seeing?
I think the focus is changing. I think the original reasons for going to the cloud, and I've done it in a number of times in previous lives, is, it might be cheaper and it might be more flexible, right? And so those might have been the driving factors. Obviously the mighty dollar, but I think as renewable energy is becoming more widely available, there's a greener energy mix, and as you can combine cloud with the green software engineering, I think it has a greater draw, and I think a lot more organizations are seeing the benefit of that. But again, it often takes sometimes just a very simple conversation to highlight some of the benefits, or a word that we use a lot when Charlotte and I are talking about this is reframing it. It's reframing the benefits of doing that thing, right?
And if we zoom out for a moment and look at all of this, what would you say that the main role of technology is in all this? And can it really be that great enabler that we want and need it to be?
Yeah, I think it can. But again, not to sound like a broken record, I think the technology and the way it's delivered needs to be sustainable as well. Yeah. So at the moment, an infrastructure stack, 60+% of that stack, of the emissions, 63% of the emissions come from end user devices, just over 20% from networks, and 15% from data centers. And if the technology that we're using carries on the incredible growth that we see, by 2040, those technologies will contribute about 15% of the carbon footprint for the globe, right? So yes, absolutely, technology can solve these problems, but it's got to be delivered sustainably, and itself has to be sustainable.
And I think another one of the big realizations at the moment is the fragility of the supply chains that we've all took for granted for most of our lives, for the most part. But what opportunities do you see around sustainability and improvements in this space too?
I think there's a couple that spring to mind. The first one makes greater use, or would make greater use, of data and data science. There's a lot of data out there in the world, right? And for supply chain, you will have data on your suppliers, the products, distances, so transport, emissions. So actually leveraging and making more use of the data and seeing where you have challenges and where you can make improvements, I think is one huge opportunity. But probably the bigger one would be moving from, I guess, linear supply chain, so take, make, waste, to the circular economy, so make, reuse, recycle. Ellen MacArthur and her foundation, fantastic job highlighting the benefits of circular economy. So those are the two main, I guess, opportunities I can see in that space.
Absolutely. And if we shift a moment to look at the world of retail, because I think retail are also trying to meet the ever-increasing demands of consumers. There's a great quote from IBM a few years ago that said the last experience that we have, the last great experience we have anywhere becomes the future expectation for what we want everywhere. So with that in mind, retailers are increasingly implementing in-store technology to meet those evolving demands of their customers. And as someone right in the heart of this space, are there any trends or opportunities that have particularly caught your attention?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest trends I've seen is greater use of labeling, more informative labeling. So we're all used to seeing, whether they're accurate or not, calorie counts, right, on foodstuffs, for example. But actually, what you tend to see nowadays is more information about where products are sourced from, whether they are whether they're free trade or not, and the environmental impact of them. If you take a very popular brewer, who I'm sure we've all seen adverts for, there is a lot of information and a lot of, I guess, publicity around the fact that they make carbon neutral beer and lager. So I think there's an educational piece there. I think that's where the availability of data and using it to inform is becoming increasingly popular.
And I think consumers are also, there was a big rise in social consumers or consumers that are socially aware, should I say. And do you think we'll reach a point where, or maybe we're already there, where some customers will choose who they do business with, who they buy from, who they have services from, based on their sustainability efforts, their carbon footprint, and how they act? And
I think we're already there. I wouldn't say it's across the board. I would say that there are more and more demographics thinking like this. Yeah. Speaking personally, at home, my wife and I, we've changed what we buy, based on, where it comes from, maybe the production processes. I think one of the obvious ones is a lot of people, certainly during the pandemic, shopped locally. They bought local produce from, local or UK producers, which is, eminently more sustainable. So I think we will see an increase in that.
And do you think brands and businesses that say they're doing all the right things and have a nice label on their website, a fair bit of virtue signalling, some would say, but actually have questionable activities with other parts of the world that may not have the same record, do you think consumers will see through that and that could harm businesses in the end too? Yeah,
we're talking about greenwashing, right? Yeah. So I think that the key to any comms, I guess, regardless of the subject matter, is being transparent.
Yeah.
Right. So and I'm not going to name any companies, because there are companies out there that shout about some very, very good sustainability drives. Yeah. But the more you dig into some of those, you may find some pretty ugly stuff going on under the covers. So I think companies have learnt to some degree that they need to be transparent. And as long as you're open and honest about what you're doing with your left hand in all the good spaces, but you're working on the bad stuff, then that's fine. But I think what will support that is actually the legislation that's coming in, right? So, companies are required to report consistently and transparently for ESG reporting. So I think you've got the meeting of minds there. You've got stakeholder expectations, but also the legislation to support that, which is absolutely key.
100% with you about that, and I too am quite hopeful about the future. And I'm curious, as someone that lives and breathes this, what makes you hopeful and maybe even excited about the future and where this is heading?
It's a couple of things, I guess, and they both sort of happened over the last couple of years. But I read Bill Gates's book, How to Have a Climate Crisis, and what I loved about that was the tangible solutions. Right, there are some very, very clever people working on this stuff. So that makes me very excited. But actually the pandemic made me quite hopeful. If you think about the scale and the speed of the vaccine development, right? It was unbelievable. So it was developed, tested, and deployed very, very quickly, right? And this is where competitors came together. They put the mighty dollar aside and they pooled resources and knowledge and technology, and look what they achieved. Yeah. So we know that these massive organizations can do this when they want to. So why can't they put those same principles into play for solving some of the big sustainability crises that we've got? And I think they can. So that makes me quite excited as well.
And what role do you see REPL in that? And is there anything else you can share about what you're focusing on and what's next for you guys?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest things for us is finding our place within the big wide world of Accenture. So we've been part of the company for a year. We've already seen increased growth and fantastic opportunities for people development and for new projects and programs. So I think for us, we're going to be moving towards more sustainable ways of working, sustainable delivery, and working with Accenture to drive change across the areas that we know the most about. And I think one of the things to mention that will be an internal focus for us is really growing and elevating our fantastic networks that we've got. So we've got Women in Tech and Pride and Diversity and Inclusion, and Accenture have the same. And actually, you just get to play in a bigger pond and make an even bigger impact, which is just as important, I think, for as the technology side of things.
Excellent. And before I let you go, I always ask my guests to leave the listeners with somewhat of a personal note of inspiration. So I'm now going to ask, can you leave us with a book that has inspired you, or even share your favourite song that we can add to our Spotify playlist?
It's an 80s classic from an often maligned Bond film. It's The Living Daylights by a-ha. It was a high point in the series after what I would describe as some fairly poor Roger Moore years. Being an Ian Fleming fan, I there was a little bit of a departure from the books, but The Living Daylights marked a bit of a comeback, and I think the song is awesome.
Awesome, and I'll add that to our Spotify playlist as well. And before I let you go in, for anyone listening wanting to find out more information about some of the work that you're doing, or even contact your team if they want to find out more, what's the best starting point for everything?
The best place to go is our website, www.replgroup.com. If you jump on there today, you'll see one version of it, but if you give us another few weeks, you'll see the shiny new version that is being developed at the moment that Charlotte and the rest of the marketing team are working on, and it'll cover everything we do, and there'll be some really good examples of what we do and how we do it. So that's the best place, and you can contact anyone at the company through the site.
Awesome. I think we covered a lot there, from supply chains, in-store technology, workforce management, data science, and project delivery do that again, and also sustainability goals in the industry and how that's going to take shape and the role that you're doing. And that all wrapped up with a great book and a a-ha soundtrack. So going to get much better than that for me. So thank you so much for sharing that with me today.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, Graeme. Love chatting with Graeme today about the increased transparency on production and consumption, reducing waste and emissions, improved working conditions and greater development opportunities. But if we put all that together, for me, what is most exciting is how technology is making it all possible. Technology is the key enabler. And that is the key message that I took away from our conversation with Graeme today. And I think what brought everything to life was his very personal story there of how, yes, he was working in the tech industry, but he wanted to make a difference. He started to question his own lifestyle choices and the projects he was driving in the workplace. Essentially, he wanted to be the change that he wanted to see in the world. And he's doing just that. So, Graeme, I applaud you. Not only for doing that and practicing what you preach, but for taking the time to share your story on here. And I hope that your words will inspire people listening all over the world. And I know we've got people listening in 165 countries. And if you've got a similar story to Graeme of how you've changed or you're using technology to improve the planet, improve the world, or make a difference, I'd love to hear your story and get it on here. So there's an open invite there. All you need to do is email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. If you've got any questions or comments or insights you want to share, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram @NeilC.Hughes. But if you do follow me or connect with me, don't just hit that button. Please send a little note. Tell me you listened to today's episode, how you found me, and we can keep this conversation going. And as we prepare to wrap up, I'm getting flashbacks of Devon in Knight Rider saying, Michael, one man can make a difference. Before I get any cheesy, I'm going to put on Aha's Living Daylights and do some good old-fashioned dad dancing before returning to you all tomorrow. So thank you for listening as always, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.